All right, welcome to the Fantasy Six Pack Network. My name is Joe Bond, founder of FantasySixPack.net. We're going to be talking some New Orleans Saints football with a brand new quarterback. We don't know which one yet. We'll find out in a minute. And to help us do that, Ross Jackson of Locked On Saints and LouisianaSports.net. What's going on today, Ross?
Hey man, not a lot. Thanks so much for having me on. Glad to be here with you.
Yeah, thank you for coming in and hopefully shedding some light here, some clearing some things up for this team. That there's a lot of question marks leading into this season after a rocky 2024 for sure. And we'll start right with the quarterback. Of course, we had the Derek Carr retirement, and so like out of the blue, and so it is now Tyler Shough, Spencer Rattler. Who's winning this battle?
Yeah. So Tyler shuck like shucking an oyster, which is appropriate for here in New Orleans. And I think right now the guy that's kind of winning that battle and a little bit ahead is Spencer Rattler. And
Okay.
that's taking into account everything from training camp on throughout the preseason. You look at the preseason stats, Joe, and you'll see two of the exact same quarterback. One's 25 of 35, the other's 24 of 34. One's thrown for 252 yards, the other's thrown for 231. They've each thrown for a touchdown interception. Their passer ratings are like pretty much the same. It's pretty insane, like how similar these two preseasons have been. And the growing trend has been the guy that starts the preseason game struggles, and the guy that comes in the second half does great, or comes in second, does great. So that's sort of what we've seen so far through those first preseason games. But I think when you add on the training camp side of things, I think right now Spencer Rattler's got a little bit of a lead on Tyler Shough just because of the overall sort of consistency of his game, which isn't super surprising. He had 6 starts last year. Yes, they were all losses, but he had 6 starts and he got an opportunity to adjust the NFL speed, which Tyler Shough isn't going to have until he gets an opportunity out there. So I'd give him the lead right now, but we'll see how long that lead lasts.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be the quarterback situation there. I think it's going to be in flux most of the year. I would think so.
Yeah,
Switch over
I think
here.
you're going to see both of these guys in 2025. I'll be very clear about that. I don't think there's going to be one that starts the whole way, you know?
I believe you on that one. So jumping over here to the running back room, Alvin Kamara, we know he is one of the best when he's on the field. How has he looked in this Kellen Moore offense? And then which of these backup running backs? We've got Devin Neal, and I'm totally blanking on his name right now.
It's Kendre Miller. There's Clyde
Miller.
There's a ton of these
those,
guys in there right
so
now.
those are the two though that like come to my mind. If there's somebody else, absolutely let me know. But who is the number 2 behind Kamara?
We do not know. That is a question that this team has not figured out yet because the running back room hasn't looked very strong here throughout the offseason at all, which has been really surprising because that's what Kellen Moore is known for, is putting together these strong run games, right? Like there's always a running back you can rely on outside of maybe that Chargers year, but that was more about the Chargers talent than it was about Kellen Moore. And so really what you're waiting to see is just how Alvin Kamara fits in. I think this could very well be Alvin Kamara's first 1,000-yard rushing season for a couple different reasons. Kellen Moore is a run-heavy coach. He loves his run game. And you've got 2 young quarterbacks, so you want that support of a run game behind that quarterback in order to take some of that pressure off of those young guys, right? You don't want second year and rookie quarterbacks going out there and playing hero ball. You want them to have a run game that supports them. And so because they've done so much to kind of keep Alvin Kamara healthy throughout training camp, we haven't gotten to really see a lot. And the run game has looked mediocre at best when it comes to the preseason so far. So I think there's still a lot of that run game that they haven't even shown yet that will come to light once you get into maybe that third preseason game where some starters are expected, but certainly week 1 up against the Arizona Cardinals, I think you'll see a little bit of that maybe come to light. So I would say right now, Alvin Kamara should be a pretty good fit in this offense, both as a receiver and as a rusher that should raise his floor a little bit in terms of how it is that he produces. He was just had his best rushing season last year, and that Clint Kubiak outside zone offense. Kellen Moore's offense is going to incorporate some of that, but also ask these guys to run between the tackles. And so that's where guys like Kendre Miller, as well as Clyde Edwards-Helaire, end up kind of being able to come in and contribute. Devin Neal, we haven't gotten to see a lot of yet. He's been dealing with a hamstring injury, which kept him out of the early preseason games. We'll see if he gets back out on the field here soon. but he's a back that maybe could surprise and then jump in. I expect that he makes the roster, but I would imagine that his role starts pretty limited and then maybe expands throughout the season. So really, from a fantasy perspective, the only running back I would say that's worthy of kind of investing in right now, at least this early on in the season, would be Alvin Kamara. But I would keep an eye on those other guys for later on in the season as their roles develop.
Yeah, I was a big fan of Kendrick Miller coming out of college. He has disappointed me,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately. And I was a big fan of Devin Neal coming out this year.
Mm-hmm.
I had him. I played in a college league last year, and he did me very well.
Oh yeah.
You mentioned the fact that you think this is Kamara's first, 1,000-yard rushing season. Does that, like, one of the reasons why fantasy managers love Alvin Kamara, especially in full PPR leagues, right? You get that full point per catch. Is that going to limit should we expect less passing to him this year because of the fact that he's going to get more rushing?
It's a good question. I don't think so. I mean, I don't think he's ever going to get back to what he was 2017, 18, and 19, where he was catching 81 passes each of those 3 seasons, right? I don't think he's ever going to get to that point in his game. But if you look at last year, he was 50 yards shy in because he missed the last 3 games, but it was 50 rushing yards shy of 1,000-yard rushing season. And so if the passing volume for fantasy owners in 2024, knowing that was enough to kind of raise that floor, then I would say, yeah, it's very likely that this year's will look kind of the same. I think the big focus in terms of the Saints' utilization of Alvin Kamara in 2025 is going to be about efficiency. How do they complement him with a running back, which we don't know who that is yet, but how do they complement him with a running back, ideally Kendre Miller, in my opinion, that ends up allowing Alvin Kamara's usage to maybe not necessarily require him to rush 250 times, but be more efficient in terms of his usage to where he might run less than 200 times, but be used in a way that allows him to be able to get up there. And so I think that you're probably looking at like a 1,500-yard all-purpose season more than likely in
Okay.
that case. And so I think that's maybe the range that makes the most sense for him. So if you felt comfortable with him last year, despite him missing the last 3 games of the season in that passing role, that's probably about what you're going to see this year. But then keep in mind, you also have, again, 2 young quarterbacks. And so that means there's going to be a big focus for him in the run game, but also he's going to be the outlet for those guys in the passing game. So maybe you see it tick up a little bit depending upon what that looks like towards the end of the season.
No, it makes perfect sense. And we go over to the receiver room, another injury-plagued room that they had last year. Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave both dealt with their own injuries. Are they looking like they are back and just fully healthy, ready to go for the season?
Yeah, they've looked like they have no limitations at all. Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed both got out there for that second preseason game against the Jaguars and got hit and got back up. And that was kind of that last thing that you really wanted to see from those guys because they looked great during training camp, especially Rashid Shaheed, who looks like he's really maintained all of that speed that he has. Chris Olave had that one big drop on that near third down conversion from Tyler Shough early on in that game. But outside of that, looked pretty steady and has consistently been the guy that each of these quarterbacks go to when they need to build a rhythm. I've noticed that. I went back through sort of my training camp notes and everything from watching training camps. And what I noticed was that when either of those quarterbacks kind of went cold, if they were working with the first team, and let's say they maybe had 2 or 3 incompletions in a row, Chris Olave was almost always the next 1 or 2, sometimes 3 targets. Like that's the guy that they went to build a rhythm, right? And so I think that that's kind of what you'll see from Chris Olave to kind of be that workhorse receiver. Rashid Shaheed is being asked to do more things than just be a deep threat, but don't get it twisted. He's still very much going to be a deep threat. He's still very much going to be a home run hitter. But they're looking at ways to maybe get him the ball 6 yards downfield and let him create with the ball in his hands as he is a former all-pro returner, right? And kind of create more opportunities there. So with more yards after catch comes more yardage is kind of the way that I would look at it with Rashid Shaheed. But Chris Olave certainly is the big focus and the number 1 guy in that offense when it comes to the passing game.
Yeah, hopefully we can get more targets and more catches for Shaheed. That would definitely help things out. A lot of these dealing with those concussions, like any worry, and team's probably not going to come out and say, but like any worry in your mind that like he just takes one bad hit and it's just done for the year.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's present for any player with or without a concussion history,
Mhm.
right? One bad hit can change a lot. We saw that with DeMar Hamlin years ago, right? Like the way
Well,
this thing
yeah.
can go is completely right. It's like completely unpredictable. And so I think you're assuming a certain level of risk being that he has a history of concussions and things like that. But I don't know that it's any more of a risk of any other player from the way that the Saints have kind of gone about this and the way that Chris Olave has gone about it. He spent the offseason kind of working on strengthening neck muscles, things like that, that kind of absorb a little bit more of the impact to take some of the pressure off of the head. He's worked with helmets and different things like that too. And so there's a lot of different
Okay.
precautions that they've taken going into there that feel pretty good, but we don't really know until he gets out there and gets hit, right? And so, uh, like that Xavier Worthy hit that he took against the Carolina Panthers, I, I don't know if I'm sure that his history of concussions may have made that worse overall, but I don't think he was going to walk away from that hit without a concussion in any
Yeah.
case, right? He could have had no concussions in his entire career, and that hit probably would have cleaned him out a little bit, right? And
Yeah.
so I think that with that in consideration, you're probably dealing with an elevated risk for sure, but I don't know that it's any more of an unknown as any other player that's going to be out there.
No, makes perfect sense. They did just acquire a new receiver a couple of days ago,
Hmm.
Devaughn Vele, from the Broncos. He was a huge surprise last season, kind of an
Hmm.
unknown commodity, and then just produced a lot. Is an older receiver. I was actually really surprised he's already 28. Um,
Right.
how is he acclimating himself to this offense?
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, he hasn't hit the practice field just yet. I
Okay.
doubt we'll see him in the final preseason game. They kind of traded for him at this weird time where like he showed up, he had to do a physical and then, get all the other stuff figured out. And so I think so I asked Coach Moore kind of what the um vision was in terms of how they wanted to utilize him. He took 69.5% of his snaps last season with the Denver Broncos out of the slot. And so I was curious if the Saints saw him as kind of this 6'4", 6'5" big slot option. And basically what Kellen Moore said was because they're acquiring him so late, he's going to start the season in a specific role, and then they'll work on growing that role and blossoming that role throughout the season. So for me, what that tells me is that he might not be a guy to invest in right off the bat,
Mhm.
but one of those guys to keep an eye out on throughout the season as that role begins to expand. We've seen this before in New Orleans, actually with Rashid Shaheed. Funny enough, when he had got here to New Orleans out of Weber State, he was dealing with that knee issue. I believe it was a meniscus injury, perhaps it was some knee issue or
Okay.
lower leg issue that he was dealing with. And then when he finally was healthy, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks down the road, they got him involved in a couple of different ways. They had him run really fast down the field. And then, of course, they used him in the jet sweep area. So his first NFL touch was a 40 something yard, 50 something yard jet sweep for a touchdown against the Cincinnati Bengals. Then his second career touch was a deep ball from Andy Dalton against the Arizona Cardinals on Thursday Night Football for a big touchdown. And so that was kind of his role, was to be the home run hitter. And so I think for Devaughn Lee, he's not going to come in and be the home run hitter, although he's got good speed at 4.47. He can operate at all three levels, all those other things. But I would look at him probably as an early move the chains option.
Yeah.
Again, young quarterbacks get the big target, get a guy that can run a slant for you and turn your 1st and 10 into a 2nd and 4. There's value in that. But then wait to see how his role develops over the course of the rest of the season from there.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. All right, so finish up here with a question that I ask everybody that comes on. And is there a guy in camp that you've seen or heard about that is kind of flying under the radar a little bit? Maybe somebody who, casuals, people outside of New Orleans haven't really heard of that fantasy managers specifically should, keep an eye on.
Yeah, I'm going to give two if that's okay.
Sure.
Um, the first one's at wide receiver. I would just keep an eye out on Mason Tipton, the young wide receiver,
Yeah.
2nd-year guy out of Yale. Another one of those big, speedy, deep threats. The Saints have like 4 of these guys: Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Brandon Cooks, Mason Tipton. Interchange them and put them in however you want. If one of those other guys goes down, Chris Olave or Rashid Shaheed, Tipton now has gotten some more experience as being the primary guy in these preseason games and things like that. So he's got a little bit more confidence connected to that. So a guy to watch out for if you need, somebody to replace if there is an injury with one of these other Saints receivers. The other player that I'd keep an eye out on is going to be tight end Juwan Johnson. Last
Mhm.
year it was Juwan Johnson, Foster Morrow, and Taysom Hill, and kind of watching how all 3 of those guys contributed in their own ways was a lot of fun. But this year, Foster Morrow as well as Taysom Hill probably going to start on the physically unable to perform list. And so with that being the case, Juwan Johnson kind of becomes the feature tight end. And we know that with young quarterbacks, every young quarterback's best friend is that tight end that's pretty close to the line of scrimmage. And so he could be one of those guys, especially maybe like a PPR league or something like that, that could get a lot of targets as the season goes on. So figuring out kind of where his draft position is and seeing if he's still lingering around that point or even after, he could be a guy that would be worth maybe a later investment.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely had some moments already in his career where he's been very valuable and very useful in fantasy. So that wouldn't surprise me at all to see him thrive here early on. All right, Ross, I want to thank you for coming on. I learned a lot. I hope everybody who was watching and listening did as well. Before we close out, we'll give you a chance to let everybody know where they can find you and what you've got going on this season.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want more, you can find the Locked On Saints podcast free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. Just search Locked On Saints. You can find the written work as well over at louisianasports.net, including up to 4 stories a day over there on the Saints. Production, fantasy, all that kind of stuff is covered over there as well. You can find it all in one place on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson Nola, Nola.
Fantastic. And if you're still sticking around, please hit that subscribe button, the like button, leave those comments. We love to hear from you. And jump over to fantasy6pack.net, become an all-access member. You get the award-winning rankings, the draft cheat sheet, player projections during the season, DFS and betting stuff as well, a whole lot more. Use promo code F6PPods. It's there on the bottom of the screen, also in the description if you're listening. And yeah, that's what I've got. And hit the playlist, check out the rest of these videos. See you next time.